Ladies and gentlemen, I'm back. It's been a year since I ranked the Disney ages. I wasn't sure if I would do this again for other animation studios. But here I am. No Disney this time, but a major competitor of theirs. And I always like to start with a little bit of backstory. Also today. Because today we are ranking the Don Bluth movies. During the 80s and 90s, Disney's biggest competitor was Don Bluth. Don Bluth was an artist who worked for Disney during the 1970s and made Robin Hood, The Rescuers and The Fox and the Hound possible, among others. However, Don Bluth decided to start on his own, becoming Disney's biggest competitor in their so-called Dark Age. His first movies were very successful, but soon Disney took back the reins with the Renaissance era in the 90s, and Bluth went bankrupt. However, that doesn't mean we should deny the wonderful movies he made, and that's why we are going to rank his 11 movies today. Let's start. A Troll in Central Park is often called the worst Don Bluth movie, and I can completely agree with everyone on that front. This movie is way too cute for its own good, and not at all what Bluth would make if he had the complete choice. Stanley, a good troll, is banished to New York's Central Park by the troll queen Gnorga. There, Stanley meets two children and he conjures up some flowers, and not much else happens in the movie. In the climax of the movie, Gnorga and Stanley battle it out, but there isn't much to it. Gnorga's song is nice and Absolutely Green is also catchy, but otherwise this film is quite boring. Too childish for people over 5 years old and not even funny. I refuse to trash this movie, but it is certainly not good. Of all the Don Bluth movies, Barto the Magnificent is the only direct-to-video film. As a result, the movie is treated less harshly than many other movies, and in itself it is okay, but to be honest, it's not a high flyer. Bartok is a fairly pleasant main character, and the talking bear is also cool, but the movie is quite boring and one-sided. Bartok must solve the mystery of the princess kidnapping by completing 3 tasks for the witch Baba Yaga. So the movie plays more like a video game where you have to do quests and ends with the main boss fight of the regent Ludmilla in her dragon form. Just like Maleficent. There are some nice songs in here, and there's certainly no shame in it, but this movie is so forgettable and has nothing to offer outside of 60 minutes of entertainment for kids. Rock-a-Doodle isn't exactly a masterpiece, and I can describe the plot quite briefly. The rooster Chanticleer crows every morning so that the sun rises, but one day he forgets this and the sun still rises. The farm animals laugh at him and he leaves. But when he's gone, the sun actually doesn't rise anymore, and they go to get him back before an army of owls comes and eats everyone. Although the story revolves around Chanticleer, he isn't really the star, as we follow a boy Edmond who is turned into a cat early in the movie by the great owl. Rock-a-Doodle is therefore a live-action animation hybrid. This doesn't quite work in the movie, but it is short and funny, especially in the ending song. Although I'm not really interested in most of the characters and the owls, Chanticleer is a fun character. He is a parody of Elvis Presley, and he performs in a kind of Las Vegas under the alias The King. Goldie Pheasant is also a typical blonde, and the evil fox who plays his manager and the toads who walk around like bodyguards are all great fun. The parts in the city are the most fun anyway, because all the magical stuff with the owls is less interesting. The songs, often based on Elvis songs or classical music, are usually very enjoyable. First of all, my apologies for this movie being rated so low. Titan AE is actually beautifully made. Don Bluth used his best animation in combination with successful CGI. The story is also great, but this science fiction movie never really captivated me. The story is about a future where humans are endangered as a species because the Drew blew up the Earth. Kale searches for the mysterious ship Titan, which can create a new planet similar to Earth. Along the way he falls in love with Akima and meets a friend of his deceased father, Captain Corso. Corso, however, appears to have other plans, but this deception is only half successful because the alien breed in turn also traps him. Titan AE is certainly a movie with a strong story, but this is not a children's movie. Titan AE is actually just a science fiction movie that happens to be hand-drawn animated by Bluth. Thumbelina is a real fairy tale. The story of a girl as big as a thumb who experiences all kinds of things. This movie is often called a diet Disney movie, and that's true. But that is what makes it entertaining. Thumbelina is a nice main character and the songs she sings are all great. Somewhere and Let Me Be Your Wings are the best. The Elf Prince is also okay, and even though the romance is cliché, it fits. Thumbelina is abused by all the animals of the forest, and that is annoying on one hand, but now I can understand it. We have a lot of villains in the movie. Evil beetles, moles, Spanish toads, they all want to use Thumbelina for their own. Oh yes, and the Spanish toads sing a great song named On the Road. With such strong music and beautiful animation, I can forgive many of the flaws this movie has. The Pebble and the Penguin. For some, this is one of the lesser Don Bluth movies, but to be honest, I am having a lot of fun with this. The Pebble and the Penguin tells the story of Yubi, the elderly penguin, who falls in love with Marina and wants to give her a stone. But his opponent, Drake, throws him into the sea, and due to circumstances he ends up on a tropical island. Yubi is now returning to Antarctica with Rocco, the yellow-crested penguin. Along the way the two become friends, although they don't really like each other at first. This movie actually has a fairly weak plot, but I find a lot of good things in the execution. The moments when Yubi and Rocco have to flee from the orcas and leopard seals are beautifully animated. Drake is just a penguin on steroids and too much Gaston from Beauty and the Beast, I admit, but I don't hate him. The other songs in this movie, such as Misery and Looks Like I Got Myself a Friend, are enjoyable. The ending when Rocco is finally able to fly is so absurd that I think it was great. All in all, definitely a movie that I like to watch every now and then, even though it may not be the best. All Dogs Go to Heaven is the turning point for many people. Some count it as the last good Don Bluth movie, others as the first bad one. Both views are incorrect in my opinion. It tells the story of Charlie, a German shepherd, who dies and goes to heaven, but returns because he wants to continue living. Charlie is not a saint. He steals, gambles and cheats. That actually makes him a very strong main character. He is murdered in the movie by his business partner, Carface. Elements such as murder by the mafia and the usual hell elements that appear in the movie are of course typical Bluth. The movie mainly focuses on the character arc of Charlie, who rescues the orphan girl Anne-Marie from Carface, but then also uses her abilities to talk to animals in order to make money. Charlie gradually begins to sympathize with her. Stories like that about orphans always resonate with me. The singing alligator and many of Carface scenes make the whole thing a bit more silly, but the heart was certainly right. The songs are not that memorable, but all in all still decent. The Secret of NIMH is a movie that I really appreciate, but don't love as much. I have the same feeling with movies like Toy Story and Coraline, by the way. All three examples are massive accomplishments for their studio and great, but I just don't love them unconditionally. Don Bluth himself calls this his masterpiece. It was this movie that he tried to pitch to Disney for years, but always got the red light. So when Bluth started out on his own, this was his first work. His love for beautiful animation is certainly reflected here. This movie tells the story of Mrs. Brisby, a mouse who has a sick child and has to move her house before the farmer starts mowing his field. She gets help from the rats of NIMH. Rats that have been genetically manipulated by humans and therefore are super smart. The story is strong and so are the characters such as Nicodemus, Jenner and certainly Mrs. Brisby. However, I don't think this is an ideal children's movie, as The Secret of NIMH can come across as very creepy. The cat, dragon and large owl seem to have come straight out of a horror movie, but it's certainly the story of the torture and experimentation on rats that Nicodemus tells that's very terrifying. Now I don't want to complain about this for too long, since Bluth certainly tries to inject humor with the clumsy crow Jeremy. And all in all, the dark atmosphere is exactly what made Bluth stand out compared to his competitor Disney. Definitely a great movie. An American Tail. I didn't grow up with this movie, but if I had, I'm sure I would have loved it. An American Tail also grows more and more towards perfection for me personally every time I see it. Bluth clearly shows here how he can create a Disney-like story with Spielberg's input. Fievel and his family are Russian immigrants to America, and the American dream drives them forward. This message remains throughout the movie, even though it soon becomes clear that America is not the promised land when Fievel gets lost and now has to save himself. Warren T. Rat is an okay villain and Tiger an okay sidekick, even if it could be better. I really like the French pigeons on the Statue of Liberty and the whole idea of the giant mouse of Minsk that has to chase the cats onto the boat. The songs in American Tail are all very entertaining. An American Tail is the movie you must see if you want to see how mice see an American dream. Don Bluth's big comeback in the 1990s was Anastasia. Both critically and commercially acclaimed, Anastasia clearly has more money because the animation is perfect, not just good. The story is about a Russian princess Anastasia who survived the massacre on her family and years later now goes to her grandmother in Paris. Along the way she meets Dmitri, who initially wants to abuse her but gradually develops feelings for her. The movie's villain Rasputin also deserves a mention. This is one of the best non-Disney villains and has the best non-Disney villain song of all time, Dark of the Night. Not only his song but the entire soundtrack is memorable, with Journey to the Past and Once Upon a December. Anastasia is a fantastic movie. It triumphs over classics that Bluth made in the 80s. It's not historically accurate, but I don't care. A good love story with great songs and formidable characters and action is without a doubt incredibly great. The only Don Bluth movie I grew up with as a child, and therefore without a doubt the one that will be on top of the list. The Land Before Time tells the story of Littlefoot, the young Apatosaurus, who loses his mother in a battle with an evil T-Rex. Littlefoot befriends Sarah, the Triceratops, Ducky, the Saurolophus, Petrie, the Pteranodon, and Spike, the Stegosaurus. Together they travel to a magical valley with no meat eaters. But the road is full of dangers. The movie starts very magically, but the death of Littlefoot's mother is really moving and a real weeping scene. The fact that all dinosaurs are actually racist and live separately from each other is very special, but fits in the story they were trying to tell. The Land Before Time is still the best cartoon about dinosaurs. Although a large part of the movie takes place in a wasteland, and the idea of the T-Rex drowning is actually quite dark. But what else did we expect from Don Bluth? A masterpiece that everyone should see. So, that was the Don Bluth movie ranking. I hope it doesn't take that long for me to come back with another animation studios ranking. I'm thinking about Pixar, Laika, DreamWorks maybe, Illumination, Blue Sky Studios, lots of choices. So we'll see again next year. Bye.